Hi everyone, welcome to our video series. I'm Shilpa. I'm Assistant Director of Stepping Stone Center. By profession, I'm a speech language pathologist, and I'm really happy to host you today for our first show, that is Spectrum Speaks. And I'm honored to introduce you our first guest, Miss Deepika Gopalrao. Ma'am has a comprehensive experience of 27 years in clinical research, administrative teaching, as well as mentoring roles within field of speech language pathology and disability rehabilitation. She has worked across many countries like India, USA, and UAE. Currently, she is serving as a rehabilitation service coordinator, as well as the head of Department of Communication, Language, and Speech at Al Noor Training Center for Persons with Disability at Dubai. She has been working with Al Noor since 2006. Before that, she was a Fulbright scholar um, in special education and audiology at Boys Town National Research Hospital in Omaha, United States. She has an impressive list of achievements, including international conference presentation, publication in peer-reviewed journals, and role as a resource person for multiple seminars and workshops. Adding to this, ma'am also holds a position of scientific committee chairperson and board member of Emirates Speech and Language Pathology Society, which is affiliated to Emirates Medical Association since February 2023. With professional license from Dubai Health Authority and Rehabilitation Council of India, she's a distinguished expert whose insights and experience promise to enrich our podcast. So let's welcome ma'am.
Thank you, Shilpa.
How are you doing?
All well. How about you?
I'm doing good. I'm really excited to, getting a chance to interview you today. So I would want to start with the first question. So I wanted to know, can you share some effective communication strategies which you tailor make for kids or individuals on autism spectrum in your experience? Yeah.
So before I begin, a big thank you for having me here. A big thank you to Stepping Stones, Amrita, and the entire team. So
Pleasure,
yeah,
ma'am.
so to get started, so as speech pathologists, we know that challenges in social communication, social interaction are one of the key traits in autistic individuals, and that's seen very, very early on. So as a result of this particular trait, speech pathologists obviously play a very critical role in assessments and intervention and supporting families and individuals on the autism spectrum. Because we've had specialized training and we have these skills that enables us to deliver individual-centric services to individuals with all kinds of communication disorders, and particularly those with autism. What the work that we do is fundamentally to empower autistic individuals towards autonomous communication, towards facilitating self-advocacy, and thereby impacting the quality of their life. So the work that we do with regard to communication and the question you asked about effective communication strategies, we have to look at it rather holistically. So in terms of the impact we have, we actually impact their learning, we impact their ability to gain literacy skills, to handle and manage emotions, to share and express emotions, to handle social interactions, to manage their environment, to be able to manage themselves in a social setting. All of this contributes to their empowerment. So it's by no means a limited role. It's a wide role. It impacts across the lifespan. And we are particularly well placed to do that. Now, with regard to your question on how do we tailor make it or to customize it to meet individual needs. So some of the things that we do, most of us do it, and I just thought that it'll be good to kind of recap and review some of the things we have been doing is taking a good history of the child who comes to you or the individual who comes to you to find out the services that the person has received previously, know the impact those services have had on the person, to understand the environment, the social environment, the school environment. And because we have an impact across the lifespan, we're also looking at the age of the individual, if it's a school-aged person or an adolescent or a person who's an adult who's out to be in the open employments. We get information on all of that. One of the key aspects of customization is to identify the activities and special interests that the autistic individual is engaged in or is fond of. So,
Very,
yes, so
very.
just play, not just play, even leisure or special interests. So increasingly we find autistic individuals are particularly interested in certain areas. So a younger child might be interested in, say, slime, but slightly older child, adolescent might be interested in certain specific YouTube videos. So what are those things that you can use as a therapist to connect with this individual in your therapy sessions, to get the child to get motivated to participate in your therapy sessions? So getting history, getting information on all these aspects of that individual is very, very critical as you start observing the individual in various settings. So oftentimes we ask for videos. We ask for videos from the home setting, from a school setting. So if the child is already in a school placement, then the learning support assistant or the peers or the parent or the teachers or the other professionals from whom the child is receiving services, with the parents' permission, obviously, share videos.
Yes,
Then
definitely.
you also have to look at what is that unique interest, the uniqueness of this particular child. So what are their sensory motor needs? What are their habits? What are their experiences in the use of technology? These are all key factors. Some parts that we consistently miss as speech pathologists is to understand medication, to understand nutrition, if there's any particular diet the child is on. Many of these things impact the work we do. Any presence of associated conditions. All
Definitely.
of this information is something that we need to dig deep from the family. We are all living in multicultural and multilingual societies. So the exposure that the individual has gives us an understanding as to how we need to target for authentic and natural communication. So some of these things are very individualistic, very specific to a family. So getting this information is very crucial. Coming to effective communication strategies, some of the key things is to build that connection,
Yes.
to have child-led or individual-led therapy sessions, to look
Very, very
at,
important. Yes.
yes, very, very important, to look at authentic communication, to observe, and observe. I cannot state enough about how important observation is, where we do not just straight away jump in and ask our questions as we usually do, but to ensure that we're observing.
And
We are
not
also,
only
go ahead.
and not only in the session, right? Observation is across, just the way you said
Absolutely.
videos
Yes.
and in different settings. And I've heard, a lot of parents. I mean, we work more here with pediatrics population. So we see children are very different at home and they're very different here with us in the center. And parents always have this question, go, no, no, he does all of these things there. You would have heard that, I'm sure.
Absolutely. So what is it that makes a child do what he does at home and not in a setting that is more formal?
To
So we
understand.
as interventionists, we need to understand what is it that's creating that safe space for the child to be authentic and himself. What is
Yeah.
it that is building that trust and that connection between the child and the adult? What are those activities? What are those motivations? What are those contexts that help that child to be engaged in a way? what is it that we as individual adults in the child's environment are doing or not doing enough that's making the child do differently at home versus at home at a formal setting. So a lot of these factors play a part in our ability to provide those effective communication strategies where we follow the child's lead, we use the child's interests to get going rather than have an instructor-led approach. A child-led approach is something
Yes.
that now more and more literature is supporting. Another key factor is to honor all forms of communication. So if it's a particular gaze the child is looking towards or a gesture, so we honor every communicative attempt of the child and attribute meaning to it, attribute communicative intent to it. Think of a wide variety of communication functions that the child might be engaged in, and not just look at communicating his needs, because
Verbally.
typically we look at only the needs of the individual, and that's quite limiting because we as adults are not communicating our needs most of the time. Most of the time it's commenting, stating, asking, refusing, turning down. So we need to provide similar communicative environments and
Yeah.
modeling rich intonated language to the child is again something that we all need to do as speech pathologists. So yeah, so in total, I think presuming competence, assuming the potential of the child to learn, to develop, to think, and to grow, honoring all forms of communication, observing and having more child-led and child-driven sessions, and co-regulating with the child so that there is a sensory equilibrium in the way we are, ensuring that the sessions are conducted.
Yes, yes, definitely. Very, very important, as you said. What you were talking about, we have to respect all the modes of communication. That brings me to my next question that, what are the recent technologies in your experience you feel could help, mainly I'll bring that word alternative and augmentative communication for children. There's a lot of parents actually do not, maybe they're not realizing the importance of it and also yet to accept that any other communication other than verbal is also in communication, verbal mode, right? So that is still in a mode of acceptance here. So I would want to hear from you because you have specialized in it. So would love to hear from what kind of a technologies you think would, has come up and is helping.
Right. So to start off, I think across everywhere, the use of augmentative and alternative communication strategies, resources, and tools is something that takes time for any family or parent to accept. So it's
Yes,
not
takes
specific
time,
to a
a lot of
particular
time.
society or a particular group. It's pretty much seen everywhere. But having said that, some societies are more evolved and are able to look at all forms of communication. That's because of greater awareness and greater public acceptance of such modes.
Mhm.
And whereas certain societies are taking that much
Time.
longer, it's up to us professionals to make it more and more mainstream and to advocate for the child. So at the end of the day, we have to advocate for the autistic individual, whether it's you, me, or anybody else. All of us are equal stakeholders in the way our children or our individuals are developing.
Mhm.
So access to communication at all times is the mantra.
Yes.
So, what has been a huge transformational shift has been the use of AAC, augmentative and alternative communication apps. So, these apps have actually changed the face of the way AAC is being practiced, and it's been there now for quite a few years.
Yes.
There's a plethora of communication apps to choose from. Obviously, it's the speech pathologist who will be able to guide the family on choosing such an
What's
app.
best? Yeah.
So just having an app is not going to be enough. One needs to understand the strategies that need to be used so that that app becomes useful for the individual, for the child, for the family for communication purposes. So the app becomes the voice of the child, the app becomes a talker for the child, the device. So we also know why is AAC gaining so much of acceptance, and so there's so much of research happening, because we know the nature of autism. Many autistic individuals themselves have shared their lived experiences of what it means to be living with autism, what it does to their verbal skills, how many of them may be verbal on certain occasions and are not able to be verbal in certain other situations.
Yes.
Many of them are minimally verbal. Many of them are inconsistently verbal. I'm using the word verbal. Actually, the word verbal is not appropriate. Is vocal or minimally speaking. So some of them are minimally speaking. Some of them are inconsistently speaking. Some of them do not speak much or at all. So as a result, over periods of time, they have been misunderstood and thought of as incapable of being able to do anything, or their ability to know and understand and learn has been underestimated because of their inability to be vocal and verbal.
Big
But
time.
we know
Yes.
very well it's not true. So hence, access to communication becomes a primary right for them. And for all of us who work with them, their families, the people in their environment. So these devices, which have these apps, become their voice and become their channel to communicate with the environment. So the reason these apps have become so popular is because they're highly dynamic, easy to use, intuitive, more mainstream. Previously, we had these huge, bulky, speech generating devices, which made the individual user stand out in the community.
Yes.
Versus now, these apps are in phones and
Yes, so
iPads,
easy to, yeah, yeah.
which
Easy
is
to
very
access.
mainstream,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
and easy to carry around, and it looks very cool, because another child who may not have autism also uses an iPad or a phone
Yes.
in public. So in terms of acceptance in society, it becomes
Easier.
very cool, easy.
Easier.
So, but having said that, just having an app or a device is not enough.
There's so
So the
much into it.
communication partners need to be trained. The techniques have to be used so that there is maximum benefit that's gained from the app itself. And now apps have a huge number of features. I mean, the latest one, Avaz, is released. I don't know if you're familiar with it. The use of intonated voice and emotional tones in their
Yes,
output.
yes, yes.
It's a hugely important feature that,
Definitely.
and it's actually, again, come from the feedback of the autistic individuals who believe that for them to express their emotions and feelings,
So,
this is the best way to do it. So, so this is, again, that's the technology that's come into the forefront. That's one aspect of it. The other aspect of it that we know at Al Noor we've been using a lot. Um, we are using technology as a resource because we know many of our autistic individuals have special interests, focused interests in use of technology. So we use technology as interactive themes and activities. So for example, if you want to center an activity around preparing animation or GIFs, or we
just
also,
as
many of our
well.
yes, many of our autistic individuals are interested in programming and coding. So they prepare GIFs and animations, and they also edit photos and they edit pictures. They use Canva and Pixlr.
Oh,
Many
wow.
of them are using all of these artificial intelligence apps also, like DALI and ChatGPT and all of these tech resources. So we use that as a point to kind of work on their communication skills, because the moment you have technology that's motivating for that particular autistic individual, then you can weave your communication activities and your social communication goals around
Exactly.
those particular activities. So that's, again, something that we've used a lot of that technology. The other thing that's been around for a while and that works with some autistic individuals who do not like the grid-based
Yeah.
AAC systems is visual scene displays. So there are these popular apps that, you know, you can kind of take a picture of a particular scene, a real scene that happens in the environment, and then you can add voice, you can edit, you can, make it personalized and kind of provide an engaging communication experience, so that what happens is then that kind of stimulates and interact, gets the child to interact. So
Better.
visual scene displays are something that, again, very popular, very useful. There are apps that help you to do that. You take a photo, then you get a hotspot there, and then you kind of insert a script or a label there, and
And
then
that
that
would
will
give a
speak
voice.
back to you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, great.
So these are some of the technologies, and really, speech pathologists, I'm sure all of them, the next generation is already out there, the Gen Zs and our autistic individuals themselves. They
Themselves.
will be our biggest teachers going forward. So, and I think technology is the single biggest game changer as far as our intervention practices are concerned. So, yeah. But I'd like to, kind of say that one of the things that we all need to do is to make sure that we're constantly reading product reviews and looking at blogs and ensuring that we are subscribing to newsletters and product updates to keep ourselves abreast with what's happening, because so much is changing on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
So, and peer discussions and peer reviews and blogs, and all of the stuff that's happening on social media. So the
I think
more we are
parents
in
and
touch with, yes,
the parents and therapists both should be, very much looking into all of these at a
yes,
regular basis.
yes, yes.
Uh, this which you were telling about, the technology, the way we have to train the communication partner. So I always feel that, in my experience, it has always been there that the first work we as a therapist we have to do is more to motivate the parent, make them accept that, okay, this is a good mode, and then possibly introduce things to the child, and the child may be very happy to use it. But I always feel that there's a collaboration of the whole team needed. Just the therapist and the parent might not, it will not be enough, but the collaboration of a whole team, every kind of therapist a child is meeting. So this brings me to the next question. What I wanted to ask was, how important do you feel that collaboration of other professionals is very, very, how important is it? What do you think about it?
So obviously, it goes without saying that if one has to get a holistic view of the individual, here I'm referring to the individual because it could be a younger person or
It
an
could be
older
anything.
person.
Yes.
So if you want
Sorry,
to
I'm
get a
bringing it
holistic,
to be again child and child.
yeah.
Because possibly I
So
work a lot with pediatrics. Sorry, please go ahead.
so no worries. So if you're looking at it in terms of a holistic view, you have to collaborate. I do not think there's an option there anymore to work in silos. So, because development in one area impacts development in
Another way.
another area, and vice versa.
Yes.
So, that's one part of it. Then, given the nature of the traits, I'm not using the word symptoms or deficits, because from a neurodiversity affirming standpoint, none of these terms actually hold. So the word trait is what is used. So given the traits, the nature of traits of an autistic person, so there's social communication, there are these restricted range of interests and special interests, and then there is sensory processing. So given this wide area of traits that a person and the spectrum that the person exhibits, it's but natural that multiple specialities will be involved. So it's because the nature of autism is such that no one individual, no one professional has answers for this to address all the
Yes.
challenges that the person experiences. So it has to be a set of professionals, which is where the collaboration comes in. So, for example, if the child is well regulated, then communication intervention becomes easier. So if you're looking at sensory regulation and self-regulation, that impacts communication. So that's when you partner with the occupational therapist. So for the occupational therapist, if the child is able to express his sensory needs
Better. Yeah. So
then that's where the work of the speech pathologist impacts the work of the occupational therapist. So there is such close proximity in the kind of work we do that now there are so many ways to collaborate with, with online platforms available to collaborate. You can share specific information about a client you're working with, of course, with the prior permission of the
yes, yes.
family. Or you have general platforms where multiple professionals from multiple disciplines are collaborating and sharing information. So as an individual professional, say if I'm working in a big city like say Bombay or Bangalore or Delhi, I need to develop a network of like-minded professionals with whom I can exchange information, build partnerships, share, attend webinars, seminars, and have kind of a system in place where me and a bunch of others work together. So as a professional, I need to find that way of doing things.
Yes.
So
Sure.
there are no ready-made platforms like that probably available. I'm not sure if they are. But if there aren't, then one needs to create those platforms to collaborate either on a monthly basis, weekly basis, or a regular basis. So having said all this, professional conflicts are there across the world. So there are disagreements between professionals, whether it's
The way
between the
they
speech
perceive
pathologists,
things.
the way you perceive things, the way you practice. There are differences between speech pathologists, behavior therapists, between occupational therapists. But I think one of the things that's changed in the last few years is the fact that increasingly the autistic voice is taking a forefront.
Yeah.
So the moment the autistic voice takes a forefront, all of us have to take a backseat and listen to the autistic voice. So it doesn't matter
Works for
what
them.
professional standpoint I hold. It really doesn't matter because
Doesn't
I
matter.
do not have a lived experience of autism. Whereas I have to listen to the person who has the lived experience, who will tell us the way forward in terms of what is he or she going through and how we as professionals can provide answers if we can, and how we can draw upon a lived experiences from their lived experiences into our professional practice. So we have to drive the change in our practices. We can't work in silos anymore because the autistic individual is telling us what he or she goes through us every single day. So that's one part of the thing. The other thing that we've been doing at Al Noor is that because I mean, this is for those who are working in organizations where you can set in place a system where collaboration is encouraged or collaboration is made to happen. So if the system exists where the collaboration happens, then it's much easier.
Easier.
So for us, because we practice a collaborative model of functioning, we naturally are, meeting each other, exchanging information, ensuring that we also are doing things like co-teaching, team teaching, so that we maximize the benefit that an individual child or a group of children receive from professionals from diverse disciplines. So we share our professional techniques and our knowledge with other professionals. We receive their techniques and knowledge. So for example, if there is the use of, say, AAC, so we share it across disciplinary boundaries because communication happens every time,
Everywhere.
all the time,
Yes.
everywhere. So
Everywhere.
if a child is attending a behavior therapist session or an occupational therapist session, they need to know how they can be an effective communication partner in the use of AAC. So that's where me as a speech pathologist, I have to share this knowledge with others, simply because if I do not share this knowledge, the child doesn't receive holistic intervention. So if you're following child-centered practice, then team approach is inevitable, actually.
Definitely it is. We also support it. I thinking of that, I was just thinking, you've been having so much of experience working with adults as well. So, being a person from completely pediatric background, I would love to know what are the difficulties, challenges an individual has um, on spectrum transitioning from adolescence to adulthood? that's a huge, I mean, all the parents imagine how is it gonna be? Right now it's all therapies, early intervention and whatnot, and later what happens? Do we follow this therapies whole life long, or how is it? Right? This
Yeah.
question, you would have heard it so many times.
Yeah, so we serve a huge population above the age of 14 and above the age of 18. So both females and males. So a couple of things that I think fundamentally we need to understand as speech pathologists is that adolescence brings with it a host of changes. So whether it's neurophysiological changes, endocrinological changes, systemic changes. So purely from a biological point of view, all of us have gone through it. So it's part of the life process. So for individuals on the spectrum, obviously, we know from the literature that autism brings with it, as the child grows older, brings with it anxiety, brings with it certain changes in mood, changing bodies, comorbid conditions such as anxiety, OCD. All of these are observed, and this is where the partnership with the family, with the psychologist, with the psychiatrist, if the need arises. So the psychosocial angle comes into the picture. So typically at this time, when the child moves into an adolescent phase, there are a host of changes that happen even with regard to communication. So we've seen that there is sometimes a dip in communication skills. Certain other challenges might be seen in terms of physical changes. So, but at all of these times, if we have prioritized social communication skills where we are looking at self-expression, expression of emotions, especially self-awareness, giving the individual choices to be able to express himself, to reject what he doesn't want, to be able to handle emotions, bodily changes, sensorial needs.
There's so much. Yeah.
These are the areas, because at this time, emotional regulation is also something that needs to be worked upon. So there's a heightened need for self-care, to look at activities that will de-stress the individual, to produce a sensory equilibrium, to reduce the sensory overload. So when we have to give choices to this person, we make sure that the choice he or she makes is honored. So that's very, very powerful, because the moment the autistic individual knows that the choice he makes is honored and followed through by the adults in the environment, that creates the trust. So it's also a time when there's usually advice given on giving the individual an outlet in sport and physical activity, which will sometimes reduce the meltdowns, what are called as meltdowns and out sensory and the behavioral outbursts. It'll also help them to regulate themselves in terms of energy expenditure. This is also a time when leisure activities are very important in the autistic individual's daily routine. So incorporating time for leisure activities, special interests, hobbies, which could be art, it could be videos, whatever the person chooses to do. So
Has
having
to be
some
respected. Yeah.
structure, sorry?
That has to be respected. Yes.
Has to be respected, absolutely. And having a structured routine. So at school and in the post-school hours, that helps to make sure that the daily routine is practiced. This is also the time for working on self-advocacy and self-determination. So that's again where the communication professional comes in, where we talk about the individual's body, the changes that are happening in the body, the physical changes, the psychosocial changes, the emotional changes, and we talk about the puberty, aspects of puberty. All of those things are something that we jointly can talk about with the educator, with the parent, with the psychologist, if the child is seeing a psychologist, with
Yes.
the occupational therapist. So all of these areas and aspects are looked into. So as speech pathologists, I think we continue to play a very key role in handling young adults on the spectrum, because communication is a lifelong learning process, and I don't think it ever stops. So our roles might change in terms of our focus areas, but our role continues to be there.
Same. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Now these all things definitely, as we're speaking about the team, right? The most important, other than the individual themselves, the most important team member is the parent. And starting right from the early ages to even in the time they are transitioning from adolescence to adult, parents are all along. So how do you involve parents into the therapies, and like how do you empower them? What are your suggestions?
Um, I'm in a school system. So at Al Noor, again, it's pretty structured the way we involve parents. So the system that we have, at least twice in a year, we have a whole team that meets with the parent. So that's a given.
Mhm.
Then through the course of the year, there are different levels
It's
of
like an
parents.
IP meeting.
Yes. So one is the IP meeting and the other is the end of the year meeting. So those are the two meetings that are fixed in the academic calendar.
Okay.
But that's not it. So those are the ones that are fixed. But through the course of the year, we have different levels of parental support that we provide, and different kinds of parental support we provide. And some of it is also tailor-made to individual families.
Okay.
So we provide, so because our parents, unlike in a clinic where the parent is waiting outside or is in the session, for us, the parent is not on our premises all the time. So we invite parents to attend sessions of our students where we demonstrate specific techniques and strategies, demonstrate the use of specific resources. We send videos very, very frequently. We send videos as much as we receive. We want to get videos from home. We are sending specific videos for those parents who can't come, commuting the distance.
Mhm.
We send a whole host of resources. So links from online tools, online resources, YouTube links. We custom make home programs to meet the individual's need. So these are some of the ways we support them. We do home visits. So in certain specific cases, the whole team goes to a family's home
Wow.
and provides support,
It's
especially
amazing
in
that
terms
you're
of
making
access.
it possible. It's
Yes.
not in every setting. It's
Yeah.
not very easy
Yeah.
to do.
So we would like to visit more homes, but our social workers do these often and on a regular basis. They're in touch with the families, but the whole team visits a specific student's home with specific objectives, of course. We'd like to do this more often, but logistically it becomes very challenging to do this often. We hold a number of team meetings. So sometimes if parents have expressed a concern or they need a challenge to be addressed on the home front, a whole team of professionals meet with the parent and address them as a unit. Um, Another thing that we do, and like you just mentioned earlier, that many of our parents require that education on certain aspects of handling, or the certain myths have to be busted, especially
Yeah.
with regard to AAC. So we send them literature, we send them links, we send them videos to watch, so that they are able to get a neutral perspective on the issue being discussed. Then we hold a whole host of parent trainings. So we identify topics. Those topics sometimes come up from intervention practices or parental requests. We
Mhm.
invite other parents to come and share their experiences. And that, according to what we've seen, has been one of the biggest hits in terms of parents really receive other parents sharing the best. That's been what we've seen over a period of time, because more than professionals speaking, a fellow parent or a group of parents sharing their journey, sharing their challenges and how they have resolved those challenges actually moves something in a parent's mind and heart more than any professional
Could
advice.
ever do.
Yeah, we can ever do. Then we also invite special medical experts to visit us and share their experiences. And our parents have benefited a lot from these medical expert advice. So, yeah, so we do a whole lot of things. In a clinical setting, I think one of the things that I've heard parents say is that if we sit in a clinical setting in a session, we get to understand what's happening best, and then we can replicate it at home.
Yes. Yeah.
So I think that's again something that works. Individual practitioners have to decide how they want to do it. But if you empower your parent, I think that's something that you will never regret. The other thing that we encourage our parents to do is to ask questions, because the more questions they ask us, the
The more
more
we
we'll
can
be able
help.
to provide information and know the gaps in our services, because we think what we're saying and we think they have understood everything we've said, but the gap is then very wide at a point later in time. So we encourage them to ask questions. We encourage them to seek independent evidence of what we are saying. And this is especially true with AAC, because to help parents understand the value of AAC and accept it, it's a huge journey. So sending them articles, sending them evidences, sending them videos helps them to understand and accept it. So a lot of parent education, it's an ongoing process. It depends on at what point in that journey a parent finds himself or herself in. And there's so many factors that impact what how the parent is or will be. Again, there are huge number of parent support groups now, more than the earlier generation of parents.
Oh,
So
yes.
on various technology platforms. So we encourage parents to get part of support groups, meet other advocates, parent advocates, or student advocates, or individual advocates. I think the only way forward is through parent empowerment. There is no other way for parents. So
Yeah, I mean, I think that is the key of how we can support the child otherwise. Because if the parent is with us, I think we can provide everything which is possible as a professional to the child. Yeah,
absolutely.
or the individual again. So I would, because ma'am, you have been in this field for like good 27 years now. So I definitely, you have seen things evolve. So, I mean, with so much of experience, right, in different states, different countries. So would love to hear what are the, how have you seen the speech therapy approaches for autism evolve throughout your career? And also, what are the trends you anticipate for the future? Are there any specific research findings or development you support or feel will influence?
So in the last few years, I think two things that have impacted me as a professional, deeply impacted my own understanding, and it's still being something that I'm trying to learn more and understand better. One is the neurodiversity affirming approaches, therapy approaches. That's been, to me, extremely transformational in understanding um, a more empathetic, a more compassionate, a more rights-based approach to service in general. One of the other things that I have recently had the opportunity to take training in, and I'm still kind of getting my head around it, is the analytical language approaches and the natural language approach, from where the Gestalt language development has come about.
Yes.
And to actually realize how much we've missed in terms of not acknowledging and not providing the Gestalt language learners the kind of
Approach they needed.
strategy that they need. And a bulk of our autistic children and adults are Gestalt language users. So, and we've missed it. We've missed it for so many years, trying to use the analytical language framework with them, and we haven't met with much success. So
Now, maybe
both
for
the
our parents, you
well,
can just, or the parents who are professionals would be aware of this, but the parents who are listening, maybe you can
yeah.
let them know what exactly is this just language processing.
Yeah. So until we've all, as professionals, learned that language development, the fundamental unit of language is a word, right? So around the age of 1 year, a child learns a few words. Those are the single word, that's the single word stage. And then there are phrases, and then they develop
Sentence.
longer phrases and sentences. So that's the analytical language approach that we've all learned
And have practiced.
in our university education, and that's what we've been using. So, and that's what we've been assessing. Our standardized assessments are based on this fundamental framework. But researchers back in the 80s and thereafter more recently have begun to look at language development from a gestalt perspective, that is beyond a word. It could be a word or beyond a word. So where the fundamental unit of language is not a word, but it could be a phrase or a whole sentence or a word, but the gestalt is the unit, and from there on, how the individual who is observed to use gestalts, and these gestalts could come from various sources. It could be something that the child has heard in the environment from a parent or the siblings, or it could be a clip or something from the movies or on YouTube, or a song or a nursery rhyme, and how this gestalt is part of the whole language experience of that particular situation in which the child has been exposed to. So the base of this is from the gestalt thinking or gestalt cognition that we've studied back in grad school in under the paper of psychology. Yes. So that if we observe autistic children now, and we look back after having learned this, we look back at all the autistic children we've worked with, you'll find them repeating strains of
Certain,
nursery rhymes or
yes,
songs or movie dialogues. But they are actually, those are
communicating.
echolalic utterances that we are looking at, right? We're looking at those echolalic utterances, and we were dismissive of them previously.
We
But those
always saw,
echolalic
we see them as a stimming as well. Even,
Yes, but
yeah.
those are terms that we no longer use and are no longer neurodiversity affirming, because these gestals that the child is using initially has a lot of communicative value, because a child already is using these gestures that he's picked up from a different setting into another setting where he's able to apply, where the emotions are the same. So for example, if the child is listening to a nursery rhyme, if you're happy and you know, clap your hands, and he's hearing this as a whole thing, it's a whole episodic thing that he's listening to and he's part of. He's then using that, if you're happy and you know, clap your hands, so that he's then using in another setting,
Which is
for
similar.
which is similar. And that's where he is trying to communicate a similar emotion, but he's transposing that episodic utterance from there into another setting.
Yes.
And that is also a starting point for communication. So that is basically what gestalt language is. So initially, what appears like repetitive utterances then slowly morphs itself into self-generative language. So that is the process of natural language approach, which is part of that framework. So that has been a huge learning, and a lot of things will change as a result of more SLPs getting an understanding of this approach in the way we work with autistic individuals. Again, it's the autistic person, the autistic voice, the first person accounts of autistic individuals that are informing all these approaches. So if you go back to what we've studied as evidence-based practices, you had that triangle. So you had one arm of the triangle as published evidences. The other arm of the triangle was clinical experience and expertise, the voice of the clinician or the expert. And the third arm of the triangle was the parent, caregiver, or the client, or the individual's experiences,
Themselves.
perspectives. So now we've had the individual's experiences that are coming forth through blogs, through videos,
Books.
through books that are informing our
So many
practice.
authors. Yes.
Yes, and that are informing our practices. And that would be the trend for the future, where the autistic voice, the late diagnosed autistic individual. So we have a whole host of professionals who are autistic, who've been diagnosed later on in life, who are actually informing from their experiences and directing the way intervention and service delivery proceeds, and also a whole frame of thought, a frame of reference. So that's been a huge trend, I think. It's a huge learning, I think, for all of us.
And I mean, I heard you, and I also said that all the SLPs and also the other professionals should look into learning more about GLP, gestural language processing, and look into certifications in it, so that we all could look at individual autistic individuals from their point of view.
Yes.
So it's been so much of, I mean, these all information. Thank you for sharing these all information, ma'am. It's been so much of to hear what so many years of experience says is something we want to learn and understand from where, what are the things we need to change here as a professional, as a parent, as an individual who's listening to this. And also we would love to have more and more series with you, so that this is the time this is time bound, so I can only ask you a few questions, but I would love to hear so much more from you. So thank you so much for sharing all this with us, and we would love to have you again with us for the series, maybe with another topic, and I possibly would think of GLP as one of those.
Well, thank you so much for all the kind words, but I'm taking baby steps as far as GLP is concerned.
We'll
I'm
take it with
only
you.
sharing. Huh?
We'll take
Sorry.
it with you.
So I'm only sharing what I just learned last weekend. I have no other, I'm still learning. I mean, it's still a long way to go. I have so many questions of my own, which I've actually already put across to the trainer who delivered that fantastic course to us. So it's something that I think we're all on the path of learning. And simply because the autistic individuals themselves are talking to us and telling us what they feel, what they've been through, what they're sharing, that to me has been most impactful as a professional. Thank you so much, Shilpa, for this wonderful chat. It was lovely. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.